Hello, and welcome to the Connecting People Analytics with Business Strategy webinar. We will hear from two great speakers on how to enhance the organizational culture through technology. My name is Javier Paramo. I'm Vice President of Client Engagement for Globant's Future of Organization Studio, in charge of StarMeUp OS suite of products. Today, I have the distinct privilege to present and introduce our distinguished speakers. David Green is CEO and founder at Sandel. He is also a board advisor at Insight 222 and TrustSphere. David is a globally respected writer, speaker, conference chair, and executive consultant on people analytics, data-driven human resources, and the future of work. He helps HR practitioners and organizations leverage data and analytical thinking to drive positive business outcomes, improve performance, and enhance employee experience. Prior to launching his own consultancy business and taking up board advisory roles, David was the Global Director of People Analytics Solutions with IBM Watson Talent. As such, David has extensive experience in helping organizations embark and accelerate their people analytics journeys. Welcome, David, and thanks for accepting our invitation to the webinar. Our second speaker is Guibert. Gilbert Englebienne is one of our 4 founders of Globant and is currently Chief Technology Officer. His strong focus on technology innovation and creativity allowed Globant to become an expert in next generation practices around artificial intelligence, big data, IoT, UX, cloud, and more, while at the same time allowing the construction of a culture based on innovation. Gilbert is passionate about the digital and cognitive transformation of companies. He developed and launched a social operating systems for organizations of the future called StarMeUp OS, currently being used at Globant and many other successful companies around the world. Gilbert is president of Endeavor Argentina, co-founder of the Yao Yao Forum, and member of the Argentina 2030 Council. He was included in Globalization Today list of Powerful 25, a recognition that positions him as one of the most influential thought leaders in the industry. He frequently speaks about innovation topics at several events around the world. Thanks, Gilbert. David, again, welcome, and you have the word.
Javier, thank you very much for the kind introduction and also for welcoming me to the webinar. I'm just doing the technology now to make sure that we get my screen. Hopefully everyone can see my screen title. Can you see that, Javier and Gilbert, just nod? Perfect. Okay, so as Javier said, I've kind of been in the people analytics space now for around 5 years, previously with IBM, but now out doing other stuff. And what we're going to talk about today really is insights that I've got through my work with Insight 222, where we are helping 50 people analytics leaders at big companies based in Europe and North America to have more impact with people analytics within their organizations. And also through the conferences that I have spoken at and attended throughout the world this year. So we're only going to talk about 6 trends because we've got 20 minutes, but we'll focus on them. And for those that want to follow me on social media, please feel free to do so. There are some links there for you to do that. So first thing to say really is that according to the Deloitte Global Human Capital Trends report this year, people data is now the number one global HR trend, which for someone like me who's been in this space for, as I said, 5 or 6 years, feels like quite significant. It's always been in there in the top 10 trends, but it's kind of been languishing down at number 7 or number 8. So it really felt quite significant this year that it's at number 1. There's a lot of reasons for that. I think partly that the field is actually maturing. I think secondly, the disruption that we're facing as organizations means that it's more and more important that we bring data to the table and people data to the table to support business decisions. And also, as employees, we're expecting a similar experience at work now to that we get as consumers, and data can help personalize our experience at work and also give us insights about our own performance and well-being as well. So it's kind of, we've mixed a hot area of this. So as I said, 6 areas we're going to talk about today. Those, as I said, there could have been others in there. Something I haven't prepared to talk about is how hot it is in this market at the moment. We've seen the acquisitions recently of Glint by LinkedIn and Qualtrics by SAP, and data analytics was a big reason behind both of those acquisitions. And I expect we'll see more consolidation throughout the next 12 months and moving forward. So quickly around adoption, first of all, so the adoption of people analytics is really growing. So this is some research that the Corporate Research Forum published at the end of last year. And they found that 69% of large organizations now have a people analytics team, which feels quite significant to me, really. And the large organizations are organizations with 10,000 employees or more. And although I don't think all these organizations are really doing people analytics, I think a lot of them have rebranded their HR reporting teams. I think, again, it shows that things are moving in the right direction, and that people analytics is moving from something that was kind of on the periphery of HR to something that's really moving towards the center of HR and helping shape the HR function of the future. I did some work with LinkedIn this year, and I actually said to them, if you've got any data that kind of helps back this up. And they published 3 reports this year that are regionally based on APAC, the Americas, and Europe. And certainly for Europe, they found that the number of professionals on LinkedIn who have HR analytics, people analytics, or workforce analytics as a skill had increased in a 12-month period to May 2018, which again really shows the growth in this space. So things are increasing, and certainly, the conferences that I'm asked to speak at around the world shows that the interest in people analytics continues to rise. And a big reason for that is the business value that you can generate from it. And we're seeing more and more stories now of how that can happen. So this is a stat that I'm particularly fond of. This is some research done by Nucleus. It's 2 or 3 years old now. And they looked at analytics across the business, so enterprise analytics, and they found that for every $1 that you invest, you're pretty much getting $13 back for analytics, which is very significant when we think in HR that we're continually having been challenged around budgets, we continually challenged around ROI for investments that we want to make. And actually, they cited 3 reasons why this figure had actually gone up from the previous time they'd done the research. That was that we have more data, better technology to analyze that data, and more people with the skills to actually do the analysis as well. And all 3 of those particular measures are rising as well. So I expect this figure to be even higher the next time that they do this research. So actually, I looked for something that actually was more resonant to the people analytics space. So this is a report that Visier put out earlier this year, and they found that organizations with advanced maturity in people analytics, their profit margins were 56% higher than those that were less advanced. Now, is that just down to the fact they're doing people analytics? No, but it is an interesting correlation nevertheless. And I think it's a sign that the more advanced organizations in the world are really investing in people analytics, because they see it's a way to really get insights around productivity and performance, so they can really push the needle further. So again, looking at the business uses of people analytics, we're not going to go into all of these now. We don't have time on the webinar, but really these are some of the typical uses of people analytics and some of the benefits that you can get from a business perspective on the left-hand side in the blue, and the people perspective on the right-hand side in the green. And really that need to drive business performance and improve business outcomes, but also whilst improving the employee experience, is something that I'm really seeing. It used to be people analytics just about improving business outcomes. You can see those business outcomes there, like improving sales effectiveness. This is something that all organizations want to do. Same with customer loyalty and growth. And actually, by using people analytics and combining HR data with business data, you can start to get to insights that can help you drive improvements in all of those areas. So I thought it'd be helpful to provide a couple of examples. So this one is from Virgin Media. big media company in the UK, B2C, and they had a hypothesis that they were providing not a particularly good candidate experience. And they felt, the head of talent acquisition, that the candidate experience was so bad that they were losing customers because of it, because some of those candidates applying for jobs at Virgin Media were also customers of Virgin Media. So he took this hypothesis to the customer analytics team. So again, an idea of where you're going to then blend that HR data with consumer data, and said, look, is this something you'd be interested in investigating? And they said, yes, of course, because, you know, one of the reasons that we're here for is to help drive loyalty and customer retention and customer growth. And when they did the analysis, they found that over the course of a year, 7,500 customers who'd applied to Virgin Media as candidates had left Virgin Media as customers and presumably gone to one of their competitors within 4 weeks of being in the candidate process. So the hypothesis seemed to be really accurate. And they calculated that this was costing them $6 million in lost revenue over the course of a year, just from poor candidate experience. So that gave the impetus and the need then to invest in understanding how they could improve the candidate experience, which they did. And obviously one reason for improving the candidate experience was to try and reduce this customer leakage. But what I really liked about this particular example is they looked at some published academic research for B2C companies that provide such a good candidate experience, how it can actually persuade people that aren't customers to effectively join Virgin Media as customers because of such a positive impact during the candidate process. And they found that there was an opportunity to grow revenue by 7.7 million. So from recruiting effectively losing the company money, they worked out a way that they could actually help grow money within the organization. So again, real big business impact of this particular one, and great candidate experience is good for candidates applying as well. The second example is Clarks. So this is a shoe retailer in the UK, have offices around the world as well. And they like most most organizations, they do an employee engagement survey once a year. And their CHRO wanted to investigate, does engagement drive business performance, or is it the other way around? And in their organization, by running the analytics, they found that actually engagement was driving business performance. And they found that a 1% increase in employee engagement was leading to a 0.4% increase in business performance in their retail stores. And when you actually extrapolate that as to how much money Clarks make and what 0.4% of business performance is, that is worth $87 million over the course of a year. So again, a really significant amount. So armed with this insight, they started to then investigate, okay, let's look at our high-performing stores, our medium-performing stores, and our low-performing stores. And let's understand what are the key drivers of engagement that really engages the retail staff in these stores to help us drive engagement up. And they found two key areas. One was around the number of people within the store reporting to managers. And the more people that were reporting to a manager, the more the negative impact this had on engagement. As an HR program, this enabled them to look at their store design and how many people reported into different store managers or assistant managers. And then the other key insight was around the tenure of the store manager. The longer the tenure of the store manager, the better the engagement in the store. And what they'd been doing, like a lot of retail businesses, is they'd been taking managers from high-performing stores, putting them into low-performing stores, and hoping, obviously, they could improve business there. And they found that this was having overall a negative effect. So even if they were increasing performance in those low-performing stores by a little bit, the impact on the high-performing store that manager had come from was very negative. So again, armed with this insight, they then really looked at training and development programs for store managers and aspiring managers within stores, and really emphasized the importance of engagement there, so they could try and get some more of these kind of figures moving forward. So that's just a couple of examples of business performance. There are lots around. I publish quite a lot of them on LinkedIn once a month in the kind of best articles, so do have a look. And these are the sort of things that can help inspire people to get started. You don't want to copy what someone else has done, but it might give you an idea of a business problem that you've got within your own organization that you can look at. Another thing is around the types of data or range of data we're looking at. So this is from an article that Josh Burson published on LinkedIn in September, and you've got the link there at the bottom so you can look at this. So I think a lot of a misnomer with people analytics is it's only looking at HR data. So the HR data is in the green boxes there. But the real benefit comes when you start to combine this with the red data, which is the business data. So again, if you're going to look at sales effectiveness, for an example, yes, you've got HR data and recruiting data that can support you with that. But actually, when you look at the sales performance data, then you start to get the real insight. And then the brown data at the bottom is not necessarily new data, but new data for us to use in the aspect of actually analysing people performance. So there's a lot of buzz around organisational network analysis at the moment. So this is essentially looking at email metadata. Who sends emails to who? How frequently are they open? Do you send attachments? Do you send emails back to me? And you can start to understand networks within organisations as well. And if we think more and more work is now being done by teams, and those teams are being brought together dynamically and then split up again, we can really start to understand how work gets done within our organization, start to understand what makes a high-performing sales team, for example, identify key influencers within the organization, identify employees potentially at risk of burnout by how many emails that they're potentially sending at different times of the day. We are looking also at location data as well, and travel data, so you can understand maybe if commute distance has an impact on retention and stuff like that. And then at the bottom, you've got the blue box, which is really the people analytics teams themselves, the skills that we're bringing into HR, data science and others to really start to really analyze this data and get insights from it that can drive business performance and employee experience. So example of a different type of data source, I didn't pick an organizational network analysis one. I thought I'd pick something around the recruiting area. So this is looking at external talent supply and demand data. So let's say you're an organization and you're based in the US and you've got an opportunity, different cities where you're located, where you can potentially hire a software engineering team. You know, the hiring manager that the recruiter is hiring for might say, I want to locate that team in the Bay Area because there's more software engineers there. Why would we locate it anywhere else? And it's true, the external data tells you by the size of the bubble, yes, there are more software engineers in this particular area of the US. But then when you actually start to understand the demand for those skills, you see that the Bay Area for this particular skill is red. And actually you look at other areas where you're located as an organization, you can see here, Dallas and Austin, okay, the actual supply is a lot smaller, but the demand is a lot less. So potentially it's going to be a lot easier to hire people in there. And when you look at the compensation you have to pay as well, then actually it's relatively going to be cheaper for us. So actually it might make more sense to situate the new team in Dallas or Austin, you know, because potentially it'll be easier to hire and we can potentially keep these people longer as well. And these are the sorts of insights that are helping talent acquisition teams really have an impact and have more informed discussions with hiring managers. And if you think about this, you could also look at this, let's say you're moving into a new country, you can use this as well to identify where is the right city where we potentially want to locate our new operation, rather than leaving this for facilities and operations departments to look at. So again, this data is illustrative only, but it shows the type of thing that you could potentially look at. And this is essentially what LinkedIn's new Talent Insights product is doing for those of you that are LinkedIn customers. Okay, another big focus, another big trend within people analytics is this need to drive the employee experience. So this is where I really would see that people analytics is moving from almost a nice to have within an HR department to a must have, because it really is providing the insights that's helping transform the two main areas I see where HR is transforming. One is around this whole consumerization of HR. So this is providing better understanding and providing better experiences that are personalized for employees. So for instance, around things like digital learning, actually personalizing the learning that an employee might want to courses that an employee might want to take based on their skills, the skills that they say they want to acquire and the career development plans that they want to take within that organization. So rather like a Netflix or an Amazon, you're actually personalizing learning recommendations for employees rather than expecting them to go and look at a training directory. Again, understanding and listening and looking at sentiment analysis and looking at text, for example, in employee surveys, text answers as well, and really understanding insights from employees that might support sales, but also things that they're concerned about that you can potentially try and sort out as an organization. And then on the right-hand side, this kind of new organization of work, this kind of shift from jobs to skills. So when we bring teams together, we need to understand what skills people have got within the organization. We also need to understand the skills that we need in the future, and we need to understand Do we have those skills in place within our organization at the moment? Who are the people who have them? And let's put retention strategies around them. Who are the people that could acquire them because they have learning agility, and let's help them to do that? And where do we need to go to outside the organization to bring these skills in? Analytics and data is absolutely core to both of these things. And you're here as an HR leader or as a recruiting leader or anyone that's working with HR, people talking about employee experience, people talking about skills for the future. And again, analytics plays as a big part in that. And this model from our Adamson, and again, you can see the link to the article on LinkedIn, really crystallizes how people analytics is shifting really from what was very much a research-based function that was really providing insights to executives to 2.0, which was really around data aggregation, visualization, providing insights to managers and HR business partners and helping them do their work, to products. People analytics teams now creating products for that are helping employees, i.e. the people that actually provide the data. So that partly supporting with processes like onboarding by using machine learning and chatbots and stuff like that. But as I said, it's really actually driving things around personalization as well. And this is something that I see a lot of the people analytics organizations that are really starting to achieve maturity. They're almost becoming product shops themselves, as well as working with leading HR tech providers as well to actually bring some of these technologies in. This kind of then leads to the next trend, which is around ethics. So, we've got to remember that we are working with people data here, and we need to handle that data carefully. And we also need to be transparent with employees around how we're going to use that data. So again, Insight 222, the organization I'm doing a lot of work with at the moment, we did a survey last year of HR leaders and people analytics leaders. And we found that 4 out of every 5 people analytics projects are jeopardized by ethics or privacy concerns. So just some general tips around that really. I urge transparency upfront. So I know of an organization that before they start a people analytics project, they actually publish what they want to do on the company intranet, and they invite employees to comment on whether they think that's a cool thing to do or whether it's creepy. And if employees don't like it, they won't do it, because ultimately you need the employees to share their data with you to actually run the project in the first place. Now, what does this actually mean in practice? This means working very closely with legal and IT departments, drawing up a code of practice, ideally involving employees and workers' councils in that. Having an expert on the team, so Microsoft actually have a legal expert on their people analytics team that supports them in the projects that they potentially want to do. And working with legal departments as well before you communicate information out to the business leaders, but also to employees. And not being afraid to start small. So rather than doing something across the whole organization, if you want to personalize learning, for example, maybe take a small business unit or a country and pilot that first, learn from that, and then iterate and then move forward before you start rolling it out. I believe if you can't articulate the benefit to employees, you shouldn't do it. And then the last one is around striving for excellence. So what I mean by this is creating sustainable value with people analytics. So this isn't just about building a people analytics team. This is sometimes about embedding that in culture into HR and the customers of HR within the business as well. So this is about exciting and enabling your HR business partners. And questions that I regularly get from people analytics leaders around the world, and Jonathan Farrar, who I created the model that I'm going to show in a minute, is how can I improve my impact as a people analytics leader, as a people analytics function, as a CHRO using people analytics? How can I create more value? How can I demonstrate some of the business value on the examples I gave for Virgin earlier and also for Clark's? And what should I focus on? There's so many things that I could do. What should I focus on? Is it around developing an operating model? Is it this project? Is it that project? So Jonathan and I, and Jonathan, for those that don't know, was he actually formerly was the head of people analytics at IBM. He set up the function there and ran it for 3 years. And prior to that was an HR leader as well. And we've developed this model of the 9 dimensions of excellence in people analytics, and we based that on our experience of working with 60 organizations around the world. And each of those organizations are, at varying stages of maturity on people analytics, but they are excellent at least one of those. Now, we haven't got time to go through each of those today, but as an example, here, looking at workforce experiences under the value section, So the workforce experience, we talked about the importance of creating a great employee experience and using data to do that, democratizing data within a business by giving people, the managers and employees, the data they need to do their jobs. We talked about the business outcome part as well, how, really start with the business question, not with the data, to make sure you're solving a problem or a challenge that your organization's got. And then this whole thing around improving data literacy and exciting people analytics leaders on there. And final slide really is for those of you that want to learn, there's lots of stuff out there. Jonathan and I have created a course on My HR Future, an introduction to people analytics. It's about a 3-hour course, which might be of interest to people. And I'll leave you with that. I found a nice picture of Buenos Aires as Globant is based there. Nice colourful picture there to finish. And, I think we're going to take some questions at the end. So thank you for your time.
That is correct, David. Thank you so much. We're queuing Guibert's presentation as we switch over to him. A very, very interesting set of insights. So we'll definitely have time at the end to queue up a couple of key questions that are coming in. Guibert, do you want to take the floor?
Yes. Hello, everyone. A pleasure to be with you today. Okay, hello. Pleasure to be with you today. I would like to tell you, part of the experience that we have had at scaling our company, and also the results of some interesting experiments on how to use data to empower a more human enterprise. Now, I'm the co-founder of Globant. Globant, for those who don't know it, is a fast-growing company that in the last 15 years has grown to become one of the fastest growing companies in the world, in moving from the founding group, we were 4 founders, to be a company of about 8,000 people in many geographies. So it's fantastic when things go well and being able to grow. And that's something that really is interesting for any founder. You feel the exhilarating feeling of growth and more people joining your teams, and suddenly you end up entering an elevator and suddenly they know you, but you don't know them. So I guess that we get the feeling, pretty much in many organizations, we cross a number of people every day but suddenly we don't know their names, and even we have stopped asking them for their names or even how they joined the company in order to avoid the embarrassment of realizing that they have been next to us for quite a long time. So that was a challenge, and I remember one of the things that worried me as a founder was the fact that when you are working closely together, certain values arise. Those values, those behaviors that we collectively call the culture of the organization. And that's really something that is pervasive and that contaminates from one to another. But how do we do it when you are growing? I remember when we were about to turn 5 years old, the night before the celebration, I was thinking on, okay, I know for sure 2 things. First, I'm not gonna know everybody by their names, and I'm not gonna be next to each of my team members. So even there, how am I gonna be able to grow this company in the feeling authentic to the culture that has taken us here? So one of the things that I did that night was to actually come up with try to identify a set of values that I wanted the company to actually continue to have. And next day, we printed those values into the walls of the organization. In different offices, we tend to have these values showing, and we wanted to make it even better. I decided that we needed to make it live because, we were growing, and actually today we are, a company, as I mentioned, of about 8,000 employees, and we are in 15 countries. 40 offices across many different regions, many time zones, many cultures, and that was a challenge for us. So how, with such a scale, I could be able to actually convey all those values. And we decided to make an experiment, which was to give every member of the organization, every Glober, as we like to call ourselves, with the empowerment to actually recognize actions that were in alignment with any of these 6 values. So that week, we started to develop an experiment, which was to enable every member to recognize these actions by sending one of very few precious stars. The stars are like a small virtual currency. You have a limited amount of them. And those currencies, those stars are able to be, you are sending it to any of your co-workers when you see those actions. And the interesting thing is that you post all those actions in front of the entire company. So at any given moment, you can see the feed of everything that is happening. And we have found, the experiment worked really great. On one side, it felt great when you were able for the first time to recognize someone in front of the entire company. You were elevating your peers. But on the other hand, it also felt great to actually feel elevated. So we were putting into the hands of our people the ability to reinforce the social tissue. That's interesting, but the most interesting thing was through this, we started to create a path for people to grow their reputation wherever they were. And this is how we started to recognize some of our most valuable members. That's, for example, how I met Augustine. Augustine is a semi-senior software tester located in an office that is removed from mine. I wouldn't have had the chance to meet Augustine unless everybody was pointing at me to him. And it seems to me, from looking at the data, that Augustine was an excellent ambassador of our culture. So a few years after that, when it was the time that for us to acquire a company in India, we used Augustine as an ambassador to go and continue to spread our values in that office. This is just one of the examples of how this allowed me to understand who were there. Another thing that started to happen was that this flow of love coming from one person to another started to give light for the first time to things that we didn't know. Like, for example, how connected are 2 different offices? How connected are 2 different areas? And to understand better the social graph, the so important but informal structure of the organization. So today, why this is, I believe, is important. Organizations are facing triple challenges. You are facing a new consumer with higher demands. They are demanding from your organization not something better than the competitor. They are coming and saying, I want an Uber-like experience because I saw it on Uber. Now I want your organization in whatever industry that is to actually provide that kind of treatment. We are also facing a second challenge, which is a new workforce that is expecting and that is far more demanding from the companies that are going to work. And they will likely pivot to organizations who offer transparency, a sense of purpose, but more importantly, a clear path to increase their career and the chances of their careers. And to be honest, in many organizations, people have a hard time being noticed and feeling value. So let's try to see what we use technology for in organizations. And typically, we will see that we have a lot of systems being built for everything that is transactional. We have our ERPs, our CRMs. We have everything, systems to measure pretty much anything that is a number. On the other hand, we have communication tools, email, social networks, intranets, in order to get updated, in order to be able to conduct more business. But how does it compare with what we use technology for in our private lives? A couple of days ago, I was having breakfast, and I suddenly see my two daughters, Claire and Sophia. They were with their mobile phones, and they were doing like this. They were swiping their fingers, from in the screens, and suddenly pushing the screen, making a click on the screen. What they were doing, they were essentially on Instagram, And what's interesting is that nobody asked them to be on Instagram. So they were pivoting to Instagram as a way to feel connected. So I believe that we have, that technology has become, above all, a communication, a way for us to feel part of something larger. If you forget your phone today when coming to your office, and you discover that 20 blocks from your house, what would you do? I bet that most of you will come back to pick it up, because we cannot feel the lack of connectiveness with the people that we love. If we are about to run out of battery today, most of the people I talk to says that they feel anxious. Essentially, we need to come to the conclusion that the telephone that we have with us, the mobile phone, has become an organ that is associated with our emotions. We have somehow blended with technology as humans, up to the point that we feel it on every cell when we don't have it. So if we compare this with organizations, I would like to ask you, when was the last time that you feel the sense of urgency of logging into your ERP? I'm totally sure that you have never felt the same kind of irrefrenable willingness to actually jump into this as you do on Instagram or on WhatsApp. So I believe there is a case for us to actually start using emotions and digitalizing emotions in the enterprise. And through this, we can make it a much better organization. So this is what we believe at Globant, is that we can use technology to overcome many of the organizational limitations. Organizations have grown up to be hierarchies with a lack of empowerment at the bottom, with silos, with misalignments of objectives, bureaucracies. We have our time frame is, the amount of work we have is pushes us to focus hard on our main objectives and prevent us from doing a number of things that most of the members would love to do. I believe that pretty much all of us would love to be good managers, but suddenly we haven't born to be a manager. And actually we need to think on how we can make an organization that resonates on every potential member and every potential employee. So we believe that there is a case for using technology, and one technology in which I allow every member to build a reputation, to have a complete insight on how to become a better member of the organization. Also, I believe on the power of technology to help us realize all the amazing things that are happening around us. I'm here on this webinar, and suddenly I don't know what's happening next door, and there could be an interesting meeting, but I don't know. Needless to say, I don't know what's happening on a remote office. So essentially, how do I do this? How do I make my voice heard? How can I participate with my ideas? These are some of the things that we started to work at Globant. After the experiment we did with this solution that we call StarMeUp to reinforce the social tissue, to bring, to digitalize certain celebrations, we started to think that we could do something better. And you can wonder, okay, how many times do we really celebrate things when we allow people to celebrate? At Globant, for instance, we are celebrating one action every minute. So that's a ton of information that we can use to digitalize and to empower a lot of insights that we can all use. So with this in mind, we started to think bigger. And we've been very busy on working on what we call StarMeUp OS, which is an operating system for the organization of the future. And it consists on a number of applications that making use of micro moments and small social interactions between each of us. It allows us to solve many of these problems that any employee has. So let me show you a little bit how it works. From our desktop or from our mobile devices, people is encouraged to actually be on top of celebrations and being able to recognize actions in a very simple manner, aligning those celebrations to any of the values and sending those stars to them, penetrating hierarchies and geographies and understanding who's making the difference. Through Be There, we are allowing employees to post pictures of things that are happening, and those are being followed by people. It's like an Instagram for the organization where you don't need to follow anyone, but you can filter and enter a certain geography and know what's happening. And with Better Me, we are helping every person to be the best version of themselves. So we are suggesting people we are meeting, and in real time, we can, in a few seconds, send powerful feedback, even with our voice. So we can send help our friends, our co-workers to become better. And through Take Part, we are encouraging people to actually come up with new ideas and in a Tinder-like fashion, be able to vote the ideas of their companions. So in this way, we are able to identify entrepreneurs in the company. We are able to shorten the path from idea to execution by identifying the most urgent needs. So this is giving us a lot of information that we can use to create an interesting, very interesting source of findings to see things that we have never seen before. So let me share some of them. A few months ago, we conducted our annual survey. You know, by moving the survey from a web application into their mobile devices and using a very simple interface like Take Part offers, we have been able to shorten the time for the responses. So using Take Part, we've been able to achieve the same level of completeness of our survey by day 6, when it took us 21 days with our previous systems. So we are shortening the time by reducing friction, and we are also increasing the liquidity of data for running our business. Another interesting thing that we started to see was, okay, we started to see how one office was connecting to another, or how two different areas started to connect. So we started to see how isolated they were, or see which ones the areas that connected the most with other parts of the organization. And then we started to get even deeper. By visualizing the social graph, we started to identify, for example, how the physical space affected the way people socialize and how close they were to one another. So this is an example of one of our buildings in Buenos Aires. We have a building with 11 floors. in many of these floors, you know, they were smaller floors, and they differ totally to other kind of layouts in which we have a very large group of people in just one single floor. So at North Park, we can see that, for example, certain groups, like here we see the people care functions, they were socially closer to one another, but they were isolated from others. We also see that developers were connected to one another, sometimes mingling with some of the operations people. And we also see that the marketing department is properly isolated between, you know, from the rest of the organization. Is far away, socially speaking. We also felt that, okay, we wanted to compare how different offices were catering to the different leaders on the organization. You know, and we started to create visualizations where we are, for the sake of simplicity and clarification, we are moving the hyper connectors, those people who connect with many people, to the periphery of the graph. So we can see that on our 3 offices in Buenos Aires, named North Park, South Park, and Laminar, also known as Central Park, we are seeing that North Park is a highly attractive destination for people who are connecting to a lot of people. On the other hand, we see that Laminar also concentrates a high number of connectors. But when it comes to South Park, you know, which we felt it was not many managers wanted to be there, perhaps not as many connectors, we are seeing that South Park only has a few connectors here and there, you know, but most of them were people that were not hyperconnector, but still they are very well connected. As you can see from this graph, this is a highly and massively connected organization. Another interesting way of seeing this, and this is one of our offices, an office of around 200 people, we started to identify and to categorize people in different segments. So in this quadrant, we see people who are approximately sending stars and receiving stars in approximately the same way. These are an average team member, okay? We also see people who are really doing their jobs. These are formal leaders. For example, a manager who is actively recognizing their teams as the result of the great work they are doing, but perhaps he's just being a formal leader, but he's not being extremely well regarded by the rest of the organization. On this quadrant, we are seeing the helpers. This is where we see typically people who in the past were the unspoken heroes, you know, those heroes that were hidden in the organization. So for example, I see the people who is helping others fix their PCs or solving the networking problems. These are servers to the rest of the organization. So they are now being they are felt very, very valuable to the organization because now people is having for the first time the ability to say thank you, to recognize them in front of them. But suddenly they don't have the same opportunity to be it on the other way. They don't have the ability to be served by the rest, so they don't have such a great opportunity to say thank you to the rest. Perhaps the most interesting quadrant is the cultural leaders, those who are not only great at being recognized, but they are also fostering our culture big time. This is where I see, for example, Lucia. Lucia has been the person organizing our ski trip, one of the persons together with Augustine, which I showed previously. And she's a nuclear power of energy. You know, she's fostering culture, you know, wherever she is. Interestingly, when we map out this with the formal structure of the organization, we are seeing outliers. We can see, for example, people who must be, perhaps we can see managers who are not being able to recognize that much, okay? Or we can see people who have a willingness to serve others, even though they are not in a shared services area that's able to be serving that many people. And we are also being able to identify cultural leaders who perhaps should also become a formal leader. So this is a great opportunity to have an X-ray that penetrates hierarchies and geographies, and suddenly we can get the best out of each member. Typically, on any organization, we stop at the title. So if you are a quality assurance manager, we may suppose that we are, okay, that you may know quality assurance, but we don't know anything beyond that. So at Globant, we are taking very seriously this. And actually, we have artificial intelligence that is capturing information on what our developers are doing and the kind of information they are looking. And this is allowing them to earn points of credibility around certain topics. We are purely interested on the terms that are related to our industry, for example, to technology. So we have created a conceptual map of every term of this industry. And suddenly we are understanding that whenever you look for example, for Hadoop, which is a technology around big data, we are also earning points on big data. So suddenly this allows us to understand and give information about every member of the organization in Technicolor. So we can see and query, okay, who do I have here in the organization who can help me on certain topics? Who has been working on certain engagement and now it has moved into this? So we are assigning this information in connection to our source code. So we are able to identify who were the contributors and related to a certain piece of code and allowed for knowledge to be kept into the organization. So there are tons of opportunities. And by using machine learning, we started to understand people that were, that were making a ripple effect in the culture of our company. That's how I have to meet Ezequiel. Ezequiel is from Resistencia. It's a small town up in the north of Argentina. I don't have the luxury of going there very frequently, but I know Ezequiel for sure. Every time that he is sending a star, he's creating and inspiring others to do the same. So now we are able to spot at how, who are these members that not only add, but multiply when they are on this organization. Another interesting finding, perhaps it's the one that surprised me the most, is related to attrition. Attrition is a problem for many organizations. Talent is scarce, people has a lot of opportunities, it's very hard to attract and even harder to retain talent. So perhaps the most interesting finding that we got here at Globant is that people who are actively sending and receiving stars, that is, they value others and they feel value. This is about 60% of our population. They only live by 6%, okay? The global attrition of Globant averages around 18%. When we double click, the people who are really valued in the organizations, they just live by 6%. This is extremely low attrition for a high-tech company and for software engineers. But when we go to the opposite end of the spectrum, those who are not valued by others and who do not value others, they live by 40%. That means that through StarMeUp, we are reducing attrition by about 7 times. Essentially, this, I like to say that StarMeUp is like Velcro to the organization. In the middle, we also see 2 other parts of the population, those who only receive and those who only send. As you can see, pretty much the numbers double from one to another, okay? So we are seeing that when you only receive, but you are not engaged into sending and promoting the culture, you have double the chance of leaving the company than when you do both. And that likelihood also doubles again when you are only sending but not receiving. So feeling valuable is extremely important. And most of the time, people don't take the time to actually recognize that. And we don't have time actually to even send feedback. You know, in a typical organization, you are sending feedback once a year. As a result of that, feedback feels untimely, unfair because it only represents the last few weeks. It's partial because it's usually my boss who's sending it to me, and it's irrecoverable. You know, I just get it before the day before they tell me I'm not going to have my promotion. Okay, so we are, through StarMeUp and particularly through BetterMe, we are increasing the liquidity of feedback so you can have it at any given moment as soon as you walk out of a meeting, and you have the opportunity to become a better person. It's interesting to know that we are, you know, that by valuing our people and by putting in their hands a tool like StarMeUp to increase engagement and empowerment, that people is likely to stay in the company, you know, for much longer. But we also felt that, okay, can we identify who may be leaving the company before that happens, so we can actually act upon that? And actually the data show us that yes, we are seeing that 20 weeks before a person leaves the company, the activity on StarMeUp is actually decreasing. And this is something that we see over and over on people leaving. So these are sample data from a very traditional organization that's using StarMeUp. When I focus on Globant, I also see the same pattern. You know, there is a decrease on this. The interesting things that we have found about our culture is that people want to say thank you on the last day they are here. So suddenly they expend all their stars. I believe that's a nice gesture. So all this information is extremely valuable, and we have tons of information who help us understand, you know, the proximity of people, on how different areas on the organization are leading their people, how they integrate them. We understand in front of a potential succession plan, we are able to identify who may be a good candidate. We are also able to have an honest dialogue with some of our managers saying, hey, you know, how comes that you haven't recognized any of your team members in the last 3 months? You know, many times people reporting to me may look like an excellent manager, but suddenly I don't know how they are actually leading their teams. That's invisible for the vast majority of us. And we don't have data, at least until now. So one of the reasons why we are so passionate about digitalizing emotions and using this is because I want to create the tools for an organization to become smarter. We want to create a technological amniotic fluid that sits between us and allow us to expand our humanity, that allow us to expand the way we connect with others, the way we expand and we are able to connect and to meet new people and to create a better environment. So for that reason, we also believe that this should be turned into actionable insights for every member of the organization. So by using StarMeUp, we are able to enter an office and suddenly see, for example, let me rewind this if I can. We're able to see, for example, on a certain, as I enter an office, I can see who are the most important persons in the office. Those that I need to know by their first name. Who are the ambassadors? Those who are promoting good behaviors. How is this office in comparison with other offices? How tight is the social graph? How are my teams doing on this particular office? So for example, I'm able to compare how many celebrations different teams are doing between them. What do they celebrate? And I can use that information as an indirect indication that the team is actually having, if they are having things to celebrate, that's very important. At Globant, we are executing around 1,200 projects at any given moment. So it would be impossible for me to understand the level of satisfaction of our customers, of the level of engagement of our teams, if I was not going to be able to have something like this. So we are able to spot, all the different teams, how people is participating, how the leaders are leading here, how likely are subordinates to recognize their leaders in this office, and how is the other way around. So there are different things that we see on different offices around the globe. How is the culture? There are many other things. How do the different areas on this office are connecting to one another? And also, I'm also able to identify on my pocket who may be leaving the organization, okay? So I can have a chat and have a coffee with them. So as you can see, I believe that this is something that we cannot afford in the times we are living to run a large company that that is in front of one of the largest challenges ever, a triple challenge that promise to disrupt our businesses. And you need to move perhaps an organization that has been born before the digital times, and you need to move them to act and compete with the new kind of players. How would you do that if you are a leader? How difficult it is to actually change people and to make them think in a different way. I don't believe that we can do it unless we bring empowerment to every member of the organization. We allow the hierarchical organization to become more networked. And at the same time, we need to give each of them a clear sense of what are the rules. I am passionate about watching birds flying and how they synchronize. When you see a flock of birds, that they synchronize by using very simple behaviors that they all understand. Isn't that something that we should aim to do with our organizations? Shouldn't we aim to think on our organizations as a living organism, something that can be adaptable in order to survive? So with this, I believe that we are making the case to digitalize emotion. I believe that through digitalizing emotions, as Daniel Pink, the bestseller author of Drive, so he was saying, wow, this is actually like a microscope into organization. This is making the invisible visible. So this, I would like to thank you, and I believe we may have a place for questions.
Great insights. We got a lot of participation under the Q&A. I believe we're run a little bit out of time, but I definitely would like to grant giving one question, and because it's for both panelists. So if you can briefly address your both perspectives. And David, I'll start with you. I'll throw the question out. Could you please share some unforeseen obstacles that came up after releasing new strategies, new technology or applications in your client's experience? In your client's experience, how did you resolve this? David, wanna give it a try?
Sorry, this is challenges with implementing new technology or challenges with trying to build people analytics capability?
You can give the people analytics angle because they're just generalizing about strategies and applications. So I guess you can give that angle. That would probably
okay.
Can give the...
So I would say the common challenges with people analytics building capability are capability questions. So the skills to actually do the analytics are not skills that are typically resided in HR teams before. So that's generally bringing new skills into HR. But I would also argue it's reaching out and working with people within the organization who have those skills. So typically you'll find analysts supporting the marketing team. So the example I gave about Virgin when they were looking at customer retention, that they basically work with the marketing analyst to actually be able to do that project. I think there is the excuse that I get told a lot is our data's not good enough, and clearly you need decent data to do analytics, of course. But again, if you're focusing on the right business problems and you're combining HR data and business data, then that doesn't always solve the problem, but it does help. And clearly you need a long-term data strategy in place with your people data, with your HR data as well. And I think the other main one, the other challenge is fear, to be honest. I mean, this is something that's quite new to many organizations, in terms of many HR teams, certainly. But I think, learn the business, find out what the big challenges are and just get started.
Perfect.
Yes. I believe one of the main challenges we have is, I believe that HR departments have become extremely siloed and very process-oriented. So if you face one person, you go to compensations and they are interested on the annual evaluation because that's the fuel for them to actually make a decision. You go to all the different areas and they all have their own tool to fulfill their purpose. One of the things that is a challenge is for us to actually, for HR departments to realize that we need to have a centric vision on the user. Every employee, they want to have a simplified life. They want to have a career that can grow. And for that to happen, you need to give them all the same tools in the same fashion. And all these kind of interactions, when you stop thinking on silos and having all this data unified, gives you an opportunity to cross that data and to add richness to this. So that's one of the things, is stop thinking on silos and start thinking that you need, the culture is the foundation of a successful organization. And we need to look at across the entire organization. It's not the responsibility of one person or the other. So that's why I believe that what we are doing is not just, many people is tempted to see, okay, this is a peer-to-peer recognition. No, it's nothing like that. It's a technology to help you move your organization to a better place. It does it by entering into a number of dynamics, including posting pictures, recognizing people, giving feedback, but at the end of the day, is the source of information for a smarter organization. The second challenge is to get everybody from the CEO and below connected to this initiative. So one of the things that we do is we ask the CEO of the company to be in front of the company and to say, guys, this is where we are living interesting times. This is where the company is heading. These are going to be the 5 things that we want for you to understand. These should be extremely clear. And not only we are saying it, we are serious about it. So we are giving you now for the first time empowerment that before you didn't have. So that's extremely important. And for them to be the catalyzers of this change by sending their first stars. So I believe that's create, when people think on how to affect change, they need to understand that this is serious. So perhaps in contrast with what David said, I believe that this is not for a small proof of concept. What people think, okay, I have this opportunity to engage and to recognize certain people on my team, but suddenly the rest of the people is not there because this is a pilot. They stop investing time on that. It's like trying to connect with someone on Facebook and to find out that they are not there. So suddenly you will stop. LinkedIn and Facebook are what they are because you found everyone there. So that's my take on that.
Thank you, Gilbert. Sorry, probably I was muted, and I'll just quickly repeat. Thank you, Gilbert. Thank you, David, so much for your insights. This was a wonderful presentation. And we left some questions unanswered. Thanks for your participation. It was very, very active. We tried to answer as much live. And we'll come back to you guys offline with replying to some of these questions. Again, thank you very much, and good luck to everyone. And thank you for participating.